I would like to welcome you to my April garden tour of my backyard. This is my first official garden tour of 2025, and I am thrilled to show you the beautiful plants, the beautiful colors, and the many varieties of things that I have growing in my garden. Hi you guys, this is Nicole from My Carolina Garden. My garden is located in growing zone 8B, and we are in southeastern North Carolina. I was trying to wait until my wisteria was in bloom before I gave you this backyard garden tour. I typically say that the wisteria blooms at Easter time, and she is right on cue. It is Easter weekend. We still have a little bit more development of the plumes yet to come, but I just couldn't wait any longer to show you the gloriousness of this Amethyst Falls wisteria, which is not an invasive variety. In my rock garden, we designed it so that there's a trellis on either side of the rock garden with privacy screens in the middle. Now, originally, when we designed the privacy screens and framed them out, we thought they were going to be panels that would be removed every time a hurricane was headed our way or heavy winds were headed our way to make sure that the panels didn't blow out and break. We would remove them in advance. Until the wisteria was growing so beautifully around the privacy screen that we decided that was going to be tough enough to hold those panels in place. So we left the panels there. The wisteria is allowed to flow around the trellises we have as well as the privacy screen, and it just looks amazing. It blooms for probably only about 2 weeks out of the year with these gorgeous purple plumes. However, it does stay with its green foliage throughout the year, so we're not just looking at the vines wrapped around the privacy screens, etc. I already had a lot going for me in the rock garden because I had dressed up this space to make sure it was ready for some senior prom pictures, and so let me get into showing you all the colors of everything that is still looking great weeks later. Starting from the very end of the garden, this is the area that gets all the afternoon shade. So of course the hydrangeas are a little bit past their prime, but their pink plumes are still looking great. And the last time you saw this space, I don't think these Hudson Bay hostas had actually leafed out yet. So the Hudson Bay is so glorious because this is the foliage that's got the gorgeous yellow and green, but also the thicker foliage. So I love having this plant here. I have my two coleus that are just there to give color. They are in pots, so I wasn't sure if this was their permanent home. They're looking great. The begonias, I had overwintered this pot in the greenhouse. I want to actually take some of these begonias out of the pot so I can start planting some more in the ground and let them have more space to grow. If I had to guess, I would say these are the cordial cherry begonias. I think that's the right name. We have some reddish foliage here, as well as, of course, you can see the red stems and the red flowers. Tucked in the back there, I have another hydrangea. It's a propagation that I made from a parent plant, but I don't have a ton of shade in my garden, so I was just looking for a place where it can go, and for now, it's gonna live back there. More potted up begonias over here, another pot that was overwintering in the greenhouse, and I do have some sweet potato vines growing out of this. I was just propagating them for fun in the greenhouse as well, just so I could have more drapers in my pots. This pot of mandevilla was unintentionally placed here because mandevilla is a climbing plant. However, I was looking for a bright pop of pink to add in here, and I had these overwintering in the greenhouse as well. The mandevilla, I can't say enough great things about the saturated color. It is heat and drought tolerant, and it blooms for so long. It's an amazing performer in my garden. Down below is dianthus. I always talk about it, so I'm not going to say a whole lot right now, but you cannot beat those vibrant colors either. Then we have the cascading rock sedum that is just going wild in here. I have to say though, I love that because I don't have to add as much mulch if I have a gorgeous ground cover in my garden. There is a ton of pollinator activity in the wisteria already. Just standing here, I can hear it buzzing everywhere. The bees are super happy, and I'm super happy to have them. As I said, these gorgeous wisteria plumes still have some more opening up to do, but I just couldn't resist getting this filmed on Easter weekend. Now, typically, if you've seen other wisteria growing in trees in the wild, that is a more invasive species, and it does grow early or does bloom earlier than mine here. Again, this is the Amethyst Falls, and you know you're going to be seeing lots more updates as this continues to open up and bloom. So some of the things that are blooming just below the wisteria, I have a drift rose bush back there, and I have my African beauty, I think blue-eyed beauty, African daisies right here that I had just potted up, I don't know, a few weeks ago, I guess. And I have some lemon coral sedum that is just floofing right out of that pot. The lemon coral sedum also does so well for me, and I like it as a spiller in my pot arrangements. The tri-colored kalanchoe is still blooming. That was one of the first things I purchased this gardening season. This is all blanket flowers. The blanket flowers are budding up at this point. Once they start blooming, they're going to be blooming until frost. In here I have a mix of things to show you. The pink you see is still the creeping moss phlox, a little bit past its prime, but you can see I still have a lot going around the rocks, draping just beautifully. All of these tall stalks you see, that is an Asiatic lily. That is the tallest lily I have on my property. It comes out with pink flowers, and these get to be 3 to 4 feet tall. This one is no exception, and it has grown a lot. So I have multiple stalks over here, and then I also have moved some over to this area as well. So we'll see how that develops. I really cannot resist getting inside my garden when I'm giving these tours because I like to be up close and personal to all of my favorite little beauties. So mixed in with our creeping moss phlox, I actually have some green euonymus here that is taking off this year. It's here, it's on the other side. It actually gets those little climbing feet on it. So if you want it to grow up a trellis, in this case it's actually creeping up my rock. The euonymus is pretty cool. I am enjoying having that take off right now. Here in the front, I'm going to have my pink dahlia that is so gorgeous. Last year I showed you all the time. I am on a line of where dahlias will come back as perennial. This one does come back. I cannot tell you what variety it is because I bought it from a nursery that simply tagged it as dahlia. This gorgeousness, can you see these pink and white blooms? This is the Twister Pink Lanai verbena. I had shown you this blooming on and off throughout the winter, which I know is surprising for a verbena, but it did that because it was keeping the warmth of this rock, and the rock was setting forth these blooms as a little microclimate. So the verbena has been amazing, and I always say I can't resist things that are multicolored or variegated. Oh, so I'm loving that verbena. Here is yet more of the mandevilla. Now this mandevilla is going to eventually get creeping up that black garden gate that I have posted right up above it. But for right now, the stems are not quite long enough to make that happen. So for now, we're just gonna see the gorgeous red, kind of almost even hot pink flowers right next to the sunshine ligustrum. Mwah, I love it. Everything is so bright and sunshiny. Now, if we just simply look in this direction, this is going to be my salsa red sombrero coneflowers. I can already see it coming up strong and amazingly. These red blooms are going to be here before we know it, and they last a long time. I love the sombrero variety of coneflowers. Highly recommend those. Right behind the coneflowers, I actually have some twilight primrose, these light pink flowers. First, I would just like to note the different shades of pink that I have happening over here with the couple that are already offered inside the verbena, then the creeping moss phlox, then the diplodenia, which it's technically probably red, but it still comes off as a very vibrant hot pink. And then I have these twilight primrose. The twilight primrose was only planted in my front peninsula garden. However, I explained in the past, and I will keep explaining just so you're aware, this plant is an aggressive self-seeder. I also talk about the blanket flower being an aggressive self-seeder. This is another one. If you don't have a lot of space in your garden, you probably should steer clear of this spring blooming flower. Now it looks pretty, the flowers are delicate, but I had none planted in the backyard at all, and all of a sudden I ended up with all of this twilight primrose here. Now for me, I was able to pick out some of the other ones that had spread to areas I didn't want. I didn't want it to suffocate my verbena, for example, but I did like it right in this area because it filled it in beautifully, and again, all these shades of pink. This area is yet another full one for me. Now this has developed over the last 2 seasons, last year and this year. Dianthus and Dianthus, both purchased last year just in little plugs. They were just supposed to be annual plants, but they have bushed out beautifully. Talk about the Dianthus a lot. This is another begonia. It is simply inside that watering can pot and it's doing beautifully. Begonias, just so you're aware, are super duper easy to propagate. These are the cane begonias, so they have like the kind of watery stems to them. If you simply break apart these stems, you can root begonias in water or root them in soil. I have done that many times. So all these begonias that you see, none of them were purchased this year. I keep propagating them and then I store them for the winter and bring them out when the temperature is appropriate. This is another Hudson Bay hosta. Yes, hostas like the shade typically. It is true. This was just an experiment to put one out here, mostly because I love combining different textures of plants together. So the foliage differences of all of these combined looks outstanding. So that's why I did this. Now that baby still does pretty well, even though we're in the sun here, because I make sure I keep it watered so that part of it stays okay. It's only when we get really oppressive heat, which we do in the South, and by the end of the summer, it's going to start getting tired. I will have to clip back some foliage that gets some scorching on it, but for now, oh my gosh, that hosta is amazing. This is clearly a yellow hibiscus, tropical style. I can actually keep these in my ground over the winter as long as I protect the root system with a nice thick layer of mulch. But this was a new purchase for this year, and I'm thrilled to have some yellow hibiscus in here. My ladyhead planter, oh my gosh, my ladyhead planter is one of my favorite garden items. If I had to guess, I'd say she's been with me for 3 years now. I originally purchased her from Marshall's, I believe. If not, perhaps it was Home Goods. She is like a plasticky kind of like maybe resin composite material. She's not a concrete planter. It is very deep inside of here though. So even though she does not have drainage holes in her, and a lot of people do ask me about that, there is so much room for additional soil so that the things that I'm planting up here, which are changed out seasonally, their roots are not getting affected by not having drainage holes because the depth is so severe, and the roots don't really have enough time to grow so much that they would be bothered by it. So this is just lemon coral sedum. I have a pink and red polka dot plant here in the middle and more of those begonias. Here in southeastern North Carolina, I do not have a lot of success growing peonies, so when I get one with a bud on it, I get very, very excited. But we're gonna see if this baby actually opens up on me. The 2 urn planters here are a couple of my spring containers. I put them together a while back. So I do have the regal geraniums inside the middle there. They have to be deadheaded when their flowers expire, which I have done, and now I have some new blooms beginning to emerge. And of course we can see the African daisies over there. You'll notice I have the spiller of these containers as ivy. And I also added ivy to this mandevilla container here. I had ivy propagating in the greenhouse as well, so I thought, why not? The next section of the garden is not nearly as colorful right now because I have daylilies and irises that are the big clumps of green in the back. Those are both going to be summer bloomers. Well, the irises will be coming up fairly soon actually, but the daylilies are going to bloom for me in the summer. I do have my ham and eggs lantana over here. So that's freshly planted from a couple of weeks ago. And then I have some green twister echinacea that I started from seed that hopefully grows and looks amazing for me because I'm very, very, very excited about that guy. As we are heading in the direction of both the greenhouse and the poolside gardens, these are also some of the spring arrangements that I had made up. So we had the bromeliad that's in the center here that offers another very bright, awesome pink. This was basically a garden share item from my uncle's house in Florida. So I'm not sure what kind of bromeliad it is, but that's a stunner in the middle. Not to take anything away from this irisine, this plant here that has these awesome pink veining. Now that is supposed to just be a part sun annual. I picked it up and it was super early spring. It was in March when I put these containers together, but the irisine is doing really well. I may have to move these planters a smidge to give the irisine some relief from the major sun and heat that we're going to be having here all summer long. But for a spring container, it's fabulous. And then, of course, begonias. Begonias, I think, are very underrated plants for the amount of wow they give you. And once they start blooming, they really don't stop. So as we walk beyond the poolside arrangements there, here's what's happening over here. I have some pretty beautiful summer items in this section. Down below, I have a perennial hibiscus, and you can see the new growth is starting right there, which is very exciting because it's a huge blooming flower. And then these are my favorite cannas with the red mixed into all that foliage. So those are going to be amazing. As you can see, the banana trees are beginning to get some decent growth on them already, which is so nice. And let's check out what's happening in front of the greenhouse. Looking in the way of the greenhouse is both a little bit sad and a little bit happy. It's a little bit sad because the greenhouse right now is blazing hot and all the plants have been moved out. So seeing it look empty compared to seeing it looking so full and lush as we did our greenhouse chats this winter is just an entirely different feeling. But I have a lot of the plants that we've been loving inside there now out here, like the bougainvillea. The bougainvillea has been blooming just off and on throughout the entire winter. So this baby is going to start really loving life now that it could be outside in the sunshine. I'm going to keep it watered. I will fertilize it using water-soluble fertilizer, and I expect the blooms to just keep on coming. I have other things this way too, many pots, things that I started from bare root or seed or propagation. All of these pots are out here right now. I had gotten this hibiscus plant that does have a braided trunk down here on clearance last year. This is an amazing find because they're not necessarily inexpensive plants to have. So having these red blooms, and there are so many of them, is fabulous. Though this guy down here is sort of growing off to the side. I think what I'm going to do is try to clip it off and see if I can't get this to root separately as its own little hibiscus plant. So that's the idea on that one. So as we head toward the pool, the secret garden is over here. Not a lot of work has been done in the secret garden just yet, so we're not really going to include that in the tour this time. But I did want to show you that my potted cordyline that has the purple heart growing out of the bottom of the pot has just been moved out of the greenhouse as well. So it has suffered a smidge being inside there so very hot. Now it gets some beautiful airflow, and of course it's going to get the direct sun and be watered regularly. So while I did have to cut back some of the stems on the cordyline because we can see like we got some like rusty tired leaves, I expect some new growth to be happening on that so that this pot will again fill out. Over behind me is the area of the poolside garden that I just showed you that I was working on. So let's take a peek at that. So from the back here, this is the Eastern Baccharis, was just a volunteer plant on my property. I have another hibiscus that was another clearance item from last year, so hopefully this baby begins to fill out. Cannas have been moved around and kind of segmented by color in this garden. I have 3 Dahlia Tahiti sunrises that are planted here. They were started from bare root. Cannot wait to see how big and beautiful these blooms get. This is a pygmy date palm. It lives in the greenhouse each winter. I used to overwinter it inside my actual house before I had the greenhouse, so it's been with me for years. It does not live out in the landscape here in Zone 8B South in southeastern North Carolina. I do have to take it in for it to be protected. I've tried it being planted in the landscape. This particular one is too cold sensitive for that. Just kind of looking from the secret garden, this area here, this is a rose of Sharon, so it is really leafed out nicely. No buds quite on it yet, but I look forward to having the hibiscus style flowers on this guy this summer. Of course, these canna lilies that are the Bengal tiger with the gorgeous, also variegated foliage, just different from the other one. I have a whole swarm of them over here, but I love them. They're going to bloom with orange blooms this summer. All right, so it's very cool. I got my fishy planter out with red geraniums planted in here. It's looking great. All down below, blanket flower volunteers, blanket flowers that have blown in, seeds that blew in the wind have now planted themselves over here, and I am going to have lots of them. Right below my aqua blue flamingo is where I have my Pineapple Express mangave that I left all this foliage on just to make sure everything was going to be safe and protected until this time of year, basically. So now it's time. I can take the dead foliage off and I can see that the mangave did in fact survive the winter. So now the pool is directly behind you. So these are the gardens that live directly across the yard from the rock garden. This garden does not have a name currently. I had hoped that I'd be able to get my azaleas blooming at the same time the wisteria was blooming, but alas, they're a little bit set apart. You saw me work on this garden before prom. So this area has gotten very much neatened up, but it is much more of a showstopper, I feel, in the summer when all of the lilies that are planted in here, several varieties, are all going to be blooming. I will have regular day lilies in here. I have stargazers, I have tiger lilies, all right in the area of this bed. So again, lots and lots of summer color. I have more wisteria that I simply took some rooted pieces from the other side of the yard to put it over here on its own trellis. Lots of buds on this baby. It looks glorious with the sun shining through here. My blue garden bench, I just love the blue. It is the same color stain that I used on the wood planks for the secret garden. And I just feel like blue is my color and I love having it in here. In the coming weeks, we'll jump back into this garden and show you more of the activity that's happening, because like these are the red Texas Red Star Hibiscus, Texas Red Star Hibiscus. So you can see the height that has gotten put on them just in the last couple of weeks. These guys are just going to start skyrocketing in height, and then all of a sudden those red hibiscus blooms are going to start on them. They are a perennial variety as well, just as the other one I showed you that is starting to come up in the yard. So a lot of things will be changing and being added to this garden for more interest. Funnily enough, I'm actually going to end my garden tour by my grill, which is the area that I say I don't ever want to show because there's not a lot to show here. Well, I had kind of fixed it up again before prom came and we had company coming over. So I have some shade-loving plants over here. Like this beautiful variety of begonias is one that likes shade. And I have creeping Jenny creeping out of the front of it. I have some coleus over here just to add some color for the moment, but this is all going to be planted probably in the shade garden that I'm going to be creating. But I love coleus and all the different colored foliage that it offers. More Hudson Bay hostas, another hydrangea, which was also a propagation from a parent plant. The way that I propagate hydrangea is so simple, you guys. This is like the mop head, so it's the big leafed mop head hydrangea, and you can actually just take a low branch, a low growing branch, and bury it under the soil. Let it be under there for say 4 to 6 weeks so it gets some nice roots on it. Once those roots have been formed, you can then clip it and separate it from the parent plant and transplant it somewhere else. So the one that we started with beside the rock garden and this one are both propagations from a parent plant. But the really funny thing is I have pink petunias growing. I want to call them wild. I cannot tell you the last time I had petunias in my yard. They just don't do well for me, and they really peter out quickly in our summer sun and heat here. Well, when those showed up, I just had to laugh. Where did those seeds come from? I have absolutely no idea, but if they're going to grow wild there, heck yeah, I'm keeping them. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this garden tour. Maybe you learned a little something or feel a little inspired for your own garden. Fill it up with color and brightness and just, happy Easter. I hope everyone had a wonderful Easter weekend with their family. And until next time, you guys, Happy planting.